I knew something was off the second I heard the front door click shut. Emily walked in like she was floating. Hair perfectly set, lips touched with that coral gloss she only wears when she wants attention, just not from me. And in her arms, a bouquet of tulips. Yellow, loud, and completely unnecessary. I stood in the hallway, still in my work clothes, keys dangling from my fingers. Tulips, I said, louder than I intended. She froze. What? Her voice tried for innocence, but the edges were too sharp. Don't play dumb. You know I bring you flowers. Every week. You don't need another man doing it. Emily set the bouquet on the kitchen island, too carefully. It's just a gesture. Trevor was being nice. Nice? I let out a dry laugh. You think accepting gifts from your colleague is harmless? She tilted her head, arms crossing. So what? I'm not allowed to take flowers now. Are we doing the control thing again, Ryan? No, Emily. We're doing the respect thing. You're walking around like you're single. That's the problem. She snapped at that. Oh, give me a break. Just because someone appreciates me doesn't mean I'm betraying you. My breath caught for a second. Appreciates you? I'm your husband. I already appreciate you. But this? I gestured at the bouquet. This looks like you're provoking something. She took a slow step forward. Maybe I'm just tired of feeling invisible. That landed. Hard. We stood in the kitchen, both trying not to blink first. The AC hummed. The refrigerator ticked. Our marriage, the one built on weekend coffee runs and shared Spotify playlists, suddenly felt like it was one well-timed insult away from cracking. I shook my head, voice low. You're making yourself available, Emily. If you keep acting like you're open to being taken, someone's going to take you. The words hung in the air, electric. She didn't flinch. She just stared at me with that expression she gets when she wants me to feel like the crazy one. Maybe I miss being wanted. You are wanted, I said, the edge in my voice unmistakable. By me. Still. Even now. Silence stretched between us. She turned away first, muttering, maybe I want something else. I didn't follow her as she walked down the hall. I didn't call out or slam a door. I just stood there, listening to the sound of my life folding in on itself. My name's Ryan. I live in Austin, Texas, in a house I renovated myself. Granite countertops, hardwood floors, the works. I run a boutique renovation firm. You know, the kind that transforms old spaces into clean, modern sanctuaries. Funny how I can fix everything except what's falling apart in my own home. I thought Emily and I had built something real. We'd been married 6 years. No kids yet. Just this house, 2 cars, and a history of inside jokes now gathering dust. Lately, I've noticed the shift. She gets quieter when I talk. Her phone lights up more than it used to. And now? Flowers. From a man who isn't me. But here's the thing. I won't lose my dignity. I won't let this unravel in silence. If she wants attention from someone else, she's going to have to answer for it. Because this time, I won't just watch it happen. I'll face it. And I promise you, there's more to come. 2 days later, it was almost laughable how casual she made it look. Emily walked in wearing her navy blazer, work bag slung over one shoulder, and set a glossy, gold-trimmed package on the kitchen counter like she was placing down a loaf of bread. I recognized the branding right away. Maison du Sucre. Imported luxury sweets. The kind of overpriced indulgence you buy when you're trying to impress someone. I didn't speak at first. I was rinsing out a mug, back to her, giving her a chance to explain. A chance she didn't take. She opened a cabinet, humming some tune under her breath, completely unbothered. Like we hadn't nearly broken the foundation of our marriage in that same kitchen 48 hours earlier. I dried the mug slowly, turned, and leaned against the sink. What's that? She glanced at the package, then at me, almost bored. Sweets. From Trevor. He brought them back from his trip. I stared at her, lips pressed tight. And you thought the best place to leave them was our kitchen? She shrugged, like my tone didn't register. He gave them to me. I didn't think it needed to be a whole thing. I crossed my arms. I asked you not to accept gifts from him. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing just slightly. You told me not to accept flowers. This isn't the same. My jaw tightened. Don't do that. You know exactly what I meant. This is just another way of crossing the same line. Her smile was small, tired, maybe even a little smug. Ryan, you can't police every interaction I have. I'm not your employee. I cut in. Child? No, you're my wife. And if being my wife doesn't mean something anymore, then say that. Out loud. She paused, lips parted like she was about to say something, but didn't. I stepped closer, not to intimidate, just so she could hear the disappointment in my voice. You think I don't see what you're doing? You're not just accepting gifts. You're entertaining the idea that someone else sees you. You're testing how far you can go before I stop caring. That's when she snapped. At least someone notices me as a woman. Her voice rang out like a slap across the room. The words hit me square in the chest. I stood still, blinking. That sentence echoed in my head like it was bouncing off the walls. I noticed her, didn't I? I brought her flowers, fixed her car without her asking, sat through holiday dinners with her overbearing sister. I held her when her father passed away. I noticed her every day, but none of that mattered, apparently. Wow, I said quietly. She crossed her arms, looking down, suddenly less sure of herself. You've been distracted lately. No, Emily, I said. I've been loyal. She looked up, eyes flashing. Loyal doesn't mean present. I nodded slowly. So, this is your answer? Imported candy and long looks from some guy at work? She didn't reply. That silence told me everything. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. I felt stupid, like I'd been standing guard at the gates while she was already inside, tossing matches onto the floorboards. I walked past her and picked up the package of sweets. What are you doing? She asked. I held it for a moment, then dropped it into the trash without a word. Her eyes went wide. Are you serious? You want to be noticed? I said calmly. Fine, but don't insult me by pretending I haven't seen you this whole time. She didn't follow me as I left the kitchen, just stood there, frozen, surrounded by the smell of sugar and bitterness. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, trying to gather my breath. It wasn't just the gifts. It was the cold way she spoke to me, the way she smiled for him and smirked at me, like I was the fool who still believed in us. But I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to explode. I had one goal now, maintain my dignity. I wouldn't let this turn me into a version of myself I couldn't respect. And if she kept trying to provoke a reaction, well, she'd learn that silence can be louder than rage. I needed air. That kind of air you can't find inside a house where silence hangs like a wet cloth. So I grabbed my keys and drove. Didn't even think about where I was going until I was halfway across town and saw the familiar curve of Mason Street. He was the kind of friend who never asked for explanations. He just waited for you to start talking when you were ready. Mason lived on the quieter side of Austin, near the Greenbelt trails. His house had this big oak tree out front, with an old wooden bench underneath that creaked if you shifted too hard. It used to be our high school hangout spot. Now, it was just where we sat when life got too heavy for walls. He opened the door and took one look at me before grabbing 2 beers and heading outside. No questions. Just that nod that said, let's go. We sat side by side on the bench. The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves in long, gold streaks, the breeze warm enough to remind me this city never fully cooled down. All right, he said after a while, twisting the cap off. Lay it on me. I took a breath. She's slipping away, man. And she's not even hiding it. Mason leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Emily. Yeah. First it was flowers. Now it's gifts. From a guy at work. She doesn't even flinch anymore when I call it out. He winced. That's low. I nodded. It's like I'm invisible until I call her out, and then suddenly I'm controlling, insecure, dramatic. Sounds like she's rewriting the story while you're still living it. I let that sit for a moment, then added, and the worst part? I've done nothing wrong. Nothing. I've been there. Present. Loyal. Mason turned to me, his voice calm. Then don't let her drag you into a version of this where you lose yourself. You've got nothing to prove. He took a swig of his drink, then gestured toward the house. You know who's inside? I raised a brow. Your dog. My sister. I blinked. Lily's in town. Yup. Visiting for a few weeks. Helping with Mom's garden. You remember her? I nodded. Lily. Quiet, thoughtful Lily. She used to tag along when we were kids, always scribbling in a journal, too shy to speak up unless she had something worth saying. As if summoned, the front door creaked open. Lily stepped out carrying a tray with 2 mugs and a small plate of shortbread cookies. She smiled shyly when she saw me. Mason said you might need something stronger than beer. Tea okay? I stood, brushing off my jeans. That's perfect. Thanks. She set the tray down and gave me a quick, warm glance. There was something steady in her presence, like she wasn't trying to fix anything, just willing to stand beside it. Mason smirked as she went back inside. She always did have a thing for helping the wounded. I rolled my eyes. Don't start. He grinned. I'm just saying. Sometimes you don't need fire to recover. Sometimes you just need quiet. And for the first time in days, I felt a little bit of that quiet take root inside me. The next morning, I texted Mason 2 words. Let's go. He didn't ask for context. Just replied with a time and address. By noon, we were standing in front of a sleek downtown apartment complex with glass railings and a name that sounded like a wine label, the Hayden. I hated everything about it already. Mason didn't even bother with small talk. He held the door open, silent as we stepped into the cool lobby. Clean marble floors, fake smiles at the front desk. I told them who we were there to see. Trevor lived on the 4th floor. The elevator ride up was quiet, but charged. I kept flexing my fingers without meaning to. I wasn't sure if I was trying to prepare my hands or calm them. Trevor answered the door in a polo shirt and socked feet, like he'd just come back from a casual jog in a country club. He froze when he saw me. Oh, hey, he said, eyes darting between Mason and me. Can I help you? You know why I'm here, I said, stepping into the doorway without waiting for an invitation. His eyes flicked to Mason like he was hoping for some backup or logic. But Mason just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching. Trevor cleared his throat and stepped back. All right, come in. His apartment was tastefully minimal, chrome finishes, a large TV mounted on the wall, and, I kid you not, a single crystal decanter on a tray. The kind of place that screamed style over substance. I stood in the center of the room, not bothering to sit. Stop giving my wife gifts, I said flatly. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Look, I didn't mean anything by it. Emily and I just talk sometimes. At work. Then talk. But don't send her things. Don't text her at night. Don't play this game. Trevor looked genuinely nervous now. She didn't say she was married. That stopped me. What? He held up his hands, like he was warding off blame. She never mentioned a husband. I didn't see a ring. I figured she was single. I stepped forward before I could stop myself, closing the space between us. So you thought the ring missing meant the door was open? His throat bobbed. I mean, I wouldn't have crossed any lines. It was just a gift. 2 gifts, I corrected. You think flowers and imported sweets don't carry intent. Trevor started to say something, but I was done hearing him out. I grabbed the front of his shirt, fisting the fabric tight. Mason stood behind me, still silent, but I felt his posture shift slightly. Ready? Trevor's face went pale. Hey, okay, look, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Seriously. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't shove him. Just held him there long enough for the silence to do its job. She's not available, I said, voice low. And next time you think about being generous with a married woman, ask yourself what kind of man you want to be. I let go, stepped back. Trevor straightened his shirt with trembling hands, nodding quickly. Understood. Without another word, I walked out. Mason followed. The hallway felt quieter on the way out. Like the whole building knew something had shifted. In the elevator, Mason finally spoke. You didn't throw a punch. I exhaled through my nose. Didn't need to. He nodded slowly. You made your point. But here's the thing. I hadn't made it just for Trevor. I needed Emily to understand that there were still lines in this world. That silence is not permission, and dignity doesn't mean passivity. That afternoon, I sat in my truck for a long time outside our house. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry. I just felt clear. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't confused about what was real. And that clarity? It scared me more than anything she could ever confess. It didn't take long. The confrontation with Trevor had barely cooled before Emily lit the fuse again. It was a Thursday evening, quiet, ordinary, the kind where the hum of the fridge feels louder than your own thoughts. I had just walked in from work when she met me at the hallway with a fire already burning in her eyes. You humiliated me, she snapped, before I could even take off my shoes. I glanced up calm. Hello to you too. Don't play coy, Ryan, she hissed, following me as I set down my keys. You cornered Trevor like some jealous thug. At his home. What? You think that makes you look strong? I turned slowly. No, it makes me look married. She scoffed. You embarrassed me. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Why? Because I told another man to stop sending my wife gifts? Or because he admitted he thought you were single? That hit. She blinked. Just once. Then rallied. You had no right. I had every right. I cut in, voice even. You opened the door to this mess. I'm just cleaning up the glass. You don't own me, Ryan. No, I don't, I said. But I trusted you. There's a difference. We stood there in the hallway, no more than 5 feet apart, but the emotional distance could have filled a stadium. I took a breath. Let me ask you something. Why do you need attention from another man if you already have a husband? She flinched. It was the first real crack I'd seen in her since this whole thing began. Her mouth opened slightly, like the words were forming, but nothing came out. Not even a deflection. I didn't press. I just held her gaze, letting the question hang like fog in the space between us. I'm not yelling, I said softly. I'm not breaking anything. I'm asking a question, one you clearly don't have an answer for. Still nothing. She folded her arms, looked away. Her jaw was set, but her silence said more than any insult she could have thrown. I stepped past her, walking toward the kitchen. If this marriage doesn't mean anything to you anymore, just say that. Don't hide behind other men's candy and compliments. Behind me, I heard her exhale sharply, like she'd been holding her breath for far too long. But she didn't follow me, and she didn't say a word. Dinner was quiet that night. No fight, no apology, just the sound of forks scraping plates, and the growing realization that the woman sitting across from me wasn't battling for our marriage anymore. She was just battling to be right. The night before our anniversary, the silence didn't just linger, it weighed down the entire house. I was in the kitchen prepping vegetables when Emily passed by me like I wasn't even there. She opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and muttered, "I'm not cooking tomorrow. Figure it out." Then she turned and disappeared down the hallway, the bedroom door clicking shut with a finality that told me exactly where her heart was. Not here. I didn't reply, didn't knock, didn't ask why. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent a message. Half an hour later, Mason showed up. He brought a 6-pack and a grin that said, "This is going to be interesting." Behind him was Lily. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun, and she wore a simple sundress. Nothing flashy, just soft blue fabric that moved when she walked. She smiled when she saw me, a smile that didn't ask for anything. It just offered peace. "Hope you don't mind," Mason said, dropping the beer on the counter. Lily insisted on helping. "Of course I don't mind," I said, stepping aside. She rolled up her sleeves without hesitation. "Where's the cutting board?" And just like that, the kitchen came alive. We chopped, stirred, and moved around each other in rhythm, like we'd been doing it for years. Mason kept sneaking bites of everything, earning a playful smack from Lily every time. We laughed. Real laughter, the kind I hadn't heard in weeks. Lily's touch was subtle but constant. She'd adjust the seasoning, gently fix a crooked napkin, refill my glass before I noticed it was empty. There was no performance, no attention-seeking, just care. The contrast struck me. Emily used to do this, once. Not the cooking, she hated that part, but the presence. The energy of being with me, not just around me. Now, I couldn't remember the last time she'd looked at me like I mattered. But Lily she looked. And not in the way that made you self-conscious or pressured. She just noticed things, small things. Like how I paused every time I picked up the salt, second-guessing myself, and how she'd wordlessly slide the right spice closer with a quiet nudge. By the time we sat down to test the dishes, the kitchen smelled like rosemary and butter, and the table was set more beautifully than any anniversary we'd ever had. Mason raised a toast with soda in a pint glass. To unexpected help and better company. We clinked glasses. I caught Lily watching me over the rim of hers. Not in a flirtatious way, just present, attuned. And it hit me right there, warmth. The kind I hadn't felt in months. Later that evening, as I walked them to the door, Lily turned and softly said, "Thanks for letting me help. It was nice." I smiled. "You made it better." Her eyes held mine for a second longer than necessary. Then she followed Mason out into the night. I stood in the doorway long after the engine of his truck faded into the distance. Emily never came out of the bedroom. I guess she thought ignoring our anniversary would make a statement. But all she did was give someone else a chance to show me what real presence feels like. And now I couldn't unsee it. Our dining room was glowing. Soft golden lights strung overhead. Candles flickering in short glass holders. The table dressed with navy napkins and polished cutlery. Mason had helped bring extra chairs from the garage, and now a mix of familiar faces filled the room. Friends, old neighbors, a few work buddies. Everyone had assumed we were celebrating another strong year of marriage. If only they knew. Emily sat at the head of the table, glass of white wine in hand, looking radiant and venomous all at once. Her hair was perfectly waved, her makeup precise. She smiled wide for our guests, but every glance she threw my way carried that razor's edge she'd been sharpening for weeks. Dinner had gone smoothly, at least on the surface. I had played the gracious host, made everyone laugh with a few easy stories, helped clear plates and poured drinks. Emily stayed glued to her chair, basking in attention when it suited her and sulking in the spaces between. Then, somewhere between dessert and the last pour of wine, she did it. She raised her glass with theatrical flair and smiled around the table. "To next year," she said. "May my second marriage be better than the first." The air went still. Laughter died on lips. Forks paused midair. You could practically hear the clock ticking above the fireplace. I stayed seated, hands folded, completely unfazed. Then I smiled. A calm, clear smile. I raised my glass slowly. "Good," I said evenly. "I've already found a better wife." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then a murmur. Then shifting chairs. Then a fork clattered onto a plate. Emily's face drained of color. Her jaw dropped. "What?" she whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear. I didn't respond. I took a sip of wine, set my glass down, and turned to the person next to me to resume a casual conversation about Texas barbecue like I hadn't just shattered every illusion in the room. Emily's voice cracked the silence. "Say that's not true." But I didn't even glance at her. I just let the question dangle in the air like a wind chime in dead air. No breeze, no sound, just an uncomfortable stillness. People were watching now, some shifting uncomfortably, others wide-eyed, holding their breath. Mason, seated diagonally across from me, didn't speak. He didn't need to. The corner of his mouth twitched in something close to approval. And Lily? She wasn't at the table. She had politely declined the invitation earlier that week. Said she didn't want to intrude on family time. Smart woman. Emily finally stood. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor as she shoved it back. Her eyes were glassy now, full of disbelief and something else. Panic, maybe. But I didn't rise. I didn't chase. I didn't soothe. She'd spent months crafting jabs, nursing her ego, flirting with boundaries, seeing how far she could push before I snapped. She wanted attention. She wanted control. And in one line, I took it all away. The rest of the evening dissolved into awkward chuckles, polite exits, and murmured goodbyes. Emily disappeared into the bedroom before anyone left, and I stayed behind, collecting dishes in the silence she left behind. There was no rage in me, no chaos, just a strange, satisfying peace. Because I had finally said what she never expected to hear. And I meant it. The next morning, the house was silent. No sounds of running water. No coffee brewing. Just stillness, and a thick tension that clung to the air like humidity after a storm. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee slowly. The chair across from me remained empty. Emily appeared eventually, barefoot, wearing one of her old t-shirts that hung off one shoulder. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep, but the kind that settles into your bones after something important breaks. She sat across from me in silence, poured herself a cup of coffee, and stirred it for far longer than necessary. Then she spoke. "Do you really have someone?" Her voice was so soft, it nearly got lost in the quiet clink of her spoon hitting porcelain. I didn't rush my answer. I didn't smirk, didn't gloat. I looked at her calmly. "It's not about you anymore." That sentence, those 6 words, hit harder than anything I'd said before. Her spoon stopped mid-stir. She blinked, and I saw her chest rise sharply as if she'd just taken a blow to the ribs. "You're not serious?" she whispered. I didn't flinch. Dead serious. She stared down at her coffee, both hands wrapped around the cup like it might anchor her to something real. "Ryan, I didn't mean to," she started. But I cut her off gently. "Emily, stop. We're past all that." She looked up, eyes already wet around the edges. "So what, you just walk away? After everything we've been through?" I tilted my head. "You've been walking away piece by piece for months. I'm just catching up." That silenced her, but not for long. Suddenly her voice sharpened, pushing past the hurt with something more desperate. "At least Trevor appreciated me. At least he saw me." I held her gaze, calm and unwavering. "Then marry him if you want." Her lips parted, but the words got caught in her throat. Because she didn't want Trevor. She wanted me to stay, to forgive, to carry the weight while she tested her worth on someone else's scale. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. She stood abruptly, backing away from the table as if the room had caught fire. I can't believe you're doing this. I looked at her, unblinking. And I can't believe it took me this long. The truth is, I had spent months trying to salvage something that had already collapsed internally. I'd patch a crack, and she'd carve a new one. I'd reach out, and she'd lean further away. What was left between us wasn't love. It was routine, control, familiarity disguised as commitment. But no more. She walked to the kitchen window, arms crossed tight, staring out at the empty street like it might offer answers. Her back was to me, but I could see her breathing unevenly, like each inhale cost her something. "Who is she?" she asked finally, voice raw. I finished the last sip of my coffee, set the mug down gently. "She's not the point," I said. "You lost me before she ever showed up." Emily turned around slowly. "Then tell me why. Why didn't you fight harder?" I looked at her, the woman I had once pictured growing old with, and gave her the truth she didn't want to hear. "Because I finally realized you weren't worth losing myself over." Her face crumbled, but I didn't feel triumphant. Just done. That morning ended with no screaming, no thrown objects, no apologies. Just two people sitting at a table, realizing one of them had already left long before their body followed. I left the house that evening without telling Emily where I was going. Not because I wanted to provoke her. Those days were behind me. But because I finally understood I didn't owe her that kind of closeness anymore. The threads that once made us a we had frayed, snapped, and floated off in different directions. We were just two people now, sharing walls, but not much else. Lily was already sitting in the corner booth when I walked into the little cafe off South Lamar. One of those cozy places where the lights are warm, the tables are real wood, and the air smells faintly of cinnamon and roasted espresso. She looked up when I entered and smiled. Not wide, not performative, just this soft, genuine smile that hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I slid into the seat across from her. "I hope you're okay with coffee and dessert," she said, nudging the menu toward me. "They stopped serving food 30 minutes ago." "I'm okay with quiet," I said. Her smile grew just a little. "We ordered just coffee for me, and she convinced me to split a slice of something chocolate and rich and unnecessary. We talked at first about safe things. Work, Mason's ridiculous taste in music, a story about their mom's dog escaping and running into a church mid-sermon. But eventually, the conversation slowed into something deeper. She sipped her coffee, then looked at me gently. "That dinner last night. That couldn't have been easy." I shook my head. It wasn't, but it was honest, which made it bearable. She nodded, setting her cup down carefully. "I've seen you these past weeks. You've held yourself together with more strength than I think even you realize." I didn't know what to say to that. Compliments always hit different when they come without agenda. "You helped," I finally said. "That night in the kitchen. It reminded me what warmth feels like." I forgot how much I missed that. She looked away for a second, almost shyly. "I didn't do anything special. You were kind. You were present. That's rarer than people think." There was a pause. A long, comfortable one. Then she said, "Ryan, do you know what you want next?" I thought about that. Not revenge. Not closure. Not even justice anymore. "I want peace," I said. "Not quiet. Real peace. The kind that doesn't make you question your worth every time you sit at a dinner table." Her eyes softened, and something passed between us then. Not a promise. Not a spark. Just a mutual understanding that we had both been in rooms where love was supposed to live, but didn't. I leaned back in the booth, studying her for a moment. Her presence wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it was steady. And after the storm I'd just come through, that steadiness felt like sunlight. By the time we left the cafe, the sky had turned a deep velvet blue. We stood on the sidewalk for a moment, neither of us rushing. "Thank you," I said, turning to her, "for helping me through last night. For just being real." She tilted her head. "Anytime." Then, almost without thinking, I stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that the space between us felt like a shared secret. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I didn't expect to feel again: hope. When I got home that night, the house was dim, quiet. Emily was standing halfway up the staircase, arms folded tightly across her chest like she'd been rehearsing something all evening. Her hair was pulled back, face bare, no mask this time. "I saw you," she said, voice trembling. "At the cafe. With her. I didn't bother pretending I didn't know what she was talking about. I set my keys down gently. I know. Her breath hitched. Is that what this is now? You parading around with her while I sit here? I wasn't parading, I interrupted, voice calm. I was having coffee with someone who treated me like I mattered. That silenced her, but only for a moment. Then the panic started to bleed through. You don't get to play victim, Ryan. You're the one who walked away from this. From us. No, I said, looking up at her. I walked away when it was already over. You just never noticed when you stopped being in it. She descended the stairs slowly, like she was wading through the last remains of her pride. I messed up, she said softer now. I got distracted. I let myself drift, and I didn't know how far it had gone until, she swallowed, until I realized I didn't recognize the way you look at me anymore. I didn't respond. She stepped closer, almost reaching for me. But I still love you. I gave her the most honest answer I had. I believe you. But love isn't enough when it comes with conditions and silence. Her hand dropped back to her side. What happens now? She whispered. I held her gaze. I want a divorce. The words didn't explode. They landed like a final puzzle piece. Quiet. Fitting. I had thought saying them would feel like cutting a wire. But instead, it felt like finally letting go of something I was never meant to hold alone. Emily didn't yell. Didn't cry. She just stared at me, her face slowly falling apart as realization took hold. You're really done. I have to be, I said. For both of us. She looked around the room like she was searching for something. An excuse, a memory, anything to anchor herself. But there was nothing left. Just us. And the echo of everything we'd failed to save. And that was it. She turned away, walked slowly back upstairs, and didn't look back. I stood alone in the hallway, the silence settling around me not like a punishment, but a beginning. It's funny how fast life quiets down after the storm. Weeks passed. Papers were signed. Accounts divided. There were no drawn-out battles, no messy courtroom scenes. Just a quiet agreement between two people who had finally stopped pretending to be something they weren't. The house felt lighter with every box Emily took. No more cold silences in the kitchen. No more passive-aggressive remarks woven into morning coffee routines. Just space. Empty, yes, but honest. And I filled it on my terms. One crisp Saturday, I met Mason and Lily at a park tucked away just outside the city. The kind of place you don't find unless someone shows you. Tall golden trees casting long shadows, a winding path lined with benches, and the faint sound of kids laughing in the distance. They were already there when I arrived. Mason spotted me first, stood, and clapped a hand on my shoulder like I'd just crossed a finish line. Look who made it out of the storm. I smiled. Took me a minute. Lily stood too, brushing leaves from her lap. Her eyes met mine, warm, steady, and full of something that didn't need words. We walked together under the trees, no big speeches or heavy confessions. Just simple conversation about books, music, little things. It felt like finally stepping into a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. There was a moment, brief, unplanned, where we stopped at a clearing and Mason wandered off to grab drinks. Just me and Lily, the breeze gently lifting her hair, the late afternoon sun painting everything in amber. She looked up at me, a soft smile tugging at her lips. You seem peaceful. I nodded slowly. I feel like I can breathe again. She tilted her head. So, what now? I thought about that. Not as a man looking backward, but forward. I rebuild, I said. But this time, slower. With people who show up when it matters. Lily didn't say anything. She just took my hand in hers. It wasn't a declaration. Not yet. But it was enough. A beginning made not of drama or grand gestures, but of mutual respect. Presence. Clarity. As we walked back toward the picnic table, Mason tossed me a bottle of water and grinned. Told you you'd get through it. I laughed, for real this time. Not without you too. He clapped me on the back. Yeah. Don't get all sentimental on me. But I meant it. Because in a world where things fall apart quietly, where betrayal comes wrapped in pretty smiles and sweet excuses, finding people who stand by you, who see you even when you're unraveling, that's everything. I lost a marriage, but I found something better. Myself. My peace. And maybe, just maybe, someone worth walking into the future with. When Ryan looked Emily in the eye and calmly said, "Then marry him if you want," did he finally reclaim his dignity? Or was that the moment he truly let her go? Tell us in the comments what you would have done And don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.